That's right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. It's a regular Sunday show. Today is our coffee bar episode where we run our virtual help desk, if you will, where we try and take your questions related to emergency communications, ham radio, Winlink, whatever. My name is Chris Mattia. My amateur radio call sign is Whiskey 6 Alpha Hotel. I'm joined by my esteemed colleagues, as usual, David W0DHG and Dan NR6V. And together we are the WaveTalkers. And this is WaveTalkers Live, episode number 42. So let's go ahead and get into it for this week. And this week we are asking you to please not send us a Winlink check-in. Pretty much everybody is aware that this past week there was a major hurricane, Hurricane Ian, that has just been terrorizing Florida and much of the East Coast. So in order to save bandwidth on all of the Winlink RMS servers, we're asking folks to reserve Winlink right now for emergency traffic. So we're not going to take any check-ins via Winlink. However, because we are doing our coffee bar episode, which we usually do this about once every 10 or 12 episodes or so, we do have a URL here that you can go to at cq.wavetalkers.com/coffee bar. There's a really simple little form. You can go on there, fill it out, submit your questions. They'll get into the queue, and we'll just keep working through questions as much as we can throughout the episode. I'll go ahead and paste this question here into, or the URL into the chat for folks that are in there, so it's a little bit easier for you to get to that. And we see a comment coming in from Steve Waterman saying, "Thank you very much for reserving the Winlink system for the emergency communications that's going on." So while we're talking about that, also normally we would be saying, hey, if you're enjoying the stuff that we're doing, use the buy us a coffee thing. Please don't do that this week. Please, if you would like to support us or support anything, please go to the Red Cross or your favorite emergency support organization, and there's a link there, redcross.org, and help contribute to the relief effort that's going on for the hurricane. So we really appreciate that, and we always appreciate everybody supporting us as much as you can, but this is definitely the thing to do this week. So let me unpin the guys here real quick, because I want to do a little demo before we dive into a couple of questions. And so there we go. All right. So earlier this week, if you've in the amateur radio community, you've probably noticed that the FCC issued an emergency granted an emergency request to the ARRL for a temporary waiver on section 97.307F. Now, what the heck does that mean? And yes, I realize this is way too small to be able to read. Basically, it is the part of the FCC Part 97 rules that says we are limited as hams to a symbol rate for digital communications. And so they have given a 60-day waiver of that in order to better support the relief efforts for Hurricane Ian. So what does that mean for us, especially for those of us who are doing Winlink traffic? Well, if you have a Pactor modem, it allows us as hams to use the Pactor 4 protocol. Now, this is in order to support the Hurricane Ian response effort. So don't just get on and start using Pactor 4 just because you've got a Pactor modem and you can crank up the speed and you can send your Winlink traffic a little bit faster. But this is mostly for folks that are using gateways that are set up for being able to pass traffic at a faster speed. So this is going to apply to any of the SCS P4 Dragon modems that are the DR 7400 or the 7800. And I just recently went ahead and picked up a DR 7400. And so I want to very quickly just walk through the settings if you have one of these, or if you pick one up, in order to be able to help lend a little bit of support to that effort. So let me quickly jump over to the PC here, and let me turn that off, and I'll transmogrify myself down into this corner, move the microphone out of the way so we can see that. And normally when you're sending Winlink traffic, for most of the check-ins, we're doing that via Telnet here, or most of the work we've been showing here on WaveTalkers is to use Vara, FM, Vara HF, or peer-to-peer in order to send those. But there's another one that we haven't actually touched on because none of us had a Pactor modem to be able to show any of this. So if you click on the little drop down here for open session, you'll notice one of the options here is the Pactor Winlink, and you can go ahead and select that. You will need a Pactor modem in order to be able to do this. And they are not cheap. Thanks everybody for all the coffee funds in order to help us get one of these, and I'll be putting my my HF gateway up not long after the show today. So you open up the session, and you can see that mine is actually configured here. Let me see if I can get this screen to come up here a little bit. There we go. So it's going to open up the Pactor session, and once everything is all set up and working, you should see something like this. You'll see a line here that says initializing the Pactor modem, whichever one that you have selected, and it'll tell you that it's a Pactor 4 modem and what COM port it's connected to and so forth. And then it'll also tell you, after it does that, it'll also connect into your radio. So I've got an ICOM 7300 set up and running here. In order to work with just the ICOM 7300, it's just putting it in emergency mode. That opens up the tuner that's inside, so you don't have to worry about an external tuner. What I've been finding this week as I've been testing it is when I run my LDG AT100 Pro 2 tuner, if I have the Pactor modem connected, I run into lots of problems. But if I just set the radio in emergency mode, you go into the settings, go all the way down in the menus down to other, and there's an option in other to be able to set emergency mode. You set it in emergency mode, it limits you to 50 watts, but that's okay. You shouldn't be running a whole lot more power than that for digital communications anyway. Set it in emergency mode, you'll have to reboot your radio, and then the Pactor modem and the 7300 should be able to talk and be happy without having the tuner in the mix. So let's quickly look at some of the settings here. You come up here to the settings menu. There's two sets of settings that you need to make sure that you've got taken care of. There's the TNC setup, and there's also the radio setup. So we'll start up here with the TNC setup. This is actually setting up the Pactor modem. We're going to go into there first, and you'll notice that right away it comes up and it says, because I've already set mine to Pactor 4, it's giving me a warning saying, hey, you're not allowed to do this as a ham unless there's this STA, this special thing, and you're covered by this. So if you set this into Pactor 4 modem, you're going to get this pop-up. So I'm going to say yes, I am covered in this because we're good there. And these are the settings. So we'll put a screenshot up of this up there. But basically what you do is you select the TNC type, and that's going to be recognized by the SCS modem or the Pactor modem. You set the COM port, and the COM port, you find that just like you find the COM port on anything else on your Windows PC. If you need to, you can go to the start menu, type in device manager, and look on the COM ports listing, and it'll show you what the COM ports are. And it does list the Pactor modem. You do have to, of course, install the drivers and so forth for that. For the TNC serial port baud rate, the one that I found that has been working the most stable for me is 38400. So that's what I've got set there. Then up here in the PSK and the FSK levels, this is one of the things that you have to calibrate your modem so that it works better. So this is kind of like when we're setting up sound modem, or we're setting up Vara, where you're adjusting the sound levels. It's kind of what's going on here, where it's setting the sound levels that the modem is going to push out to Winlink in order to get your radio to transmit. And I reached out to the Winlink development team. Mike was kind enough to send us some information. He suggested setting this at PSK level of 300 and the FSK level of 300, and that changed the game for me for my 7300. I tried a whole bunch of other different settings, and this is what ended up working for me. So that's what I'm just going to show you here. There's also a transmit delay and a CS delay in milliseconds. The TX delay is set to 30 and the CS delay is set to 50. Now, these have been, for the most part, pretty stable for me in my testing. By default, when you first come into here, this is set to max Pactor level of Pactor 3. And if you just have that, you won't get that FCC warning. But the second you change it to level 4, as soon as you change it, you get a pop-up that's saying, hey, this is normally outside of the FCC regulations for your amateur radio license. If you're operating a gateway and you're doing some relief efforts, this is covered for the next 60 days from the start date, which was, I think, September 27th from that. And so, yeah, you do meet the requirements, so you can say yes. So then you just go ahead and you update that. And if the demo gods are with you, you should see your Pactor settings then refresh here just for a second. It'll reconnect. You'll hear your radio go click, and it comes back up. Now, when I've set this up, I got my modem from HRO, and they didn't have any of the ones that had the Bluetooth connection. So I've got a USB connection from the SCS modem directly into my computer. I also have a USB connection from my radio into the computer. So I'm running 2 of those, and then there's a special cable that goes from the SCS modem directly into the 7300's data port in the back. For the 7300, this is the other set of settings here. You come up here to settings, and we're going to go to the radio setup. This is what's working again for me. For my setup, you're going to want to test this and make sure yours is set. So I've got my radio set to the ICOM 7300. My ICOM address is the 94. That's the default radio address or the CIV inside of the 7300. USB digital. You set your COM port here, the baud rate. I have mine set. I've also, again, this is what I found is to be the most stable for me. The baud rate for the communications to be 19200. Uncheck both of the enable RTS and enable DTR, and then update that. And once you do that, we'll let it reset here for just a second. There it goes. After you do that, you can either use the channel to select a different channel, or you can use the map feature. And this is working also in all of the HF options. Oh, it looks like propagation is looking pretty good here. You can find other stations in Pactor if you were trying to connect to a gateway that you could do here by simply double clicking on it. It'll tell you the information, the channel that they're on. If you select channel, I know you weren't able to see this, but my radio just changed frequencies. It's controlling the radio. Everything's set up. It's loaded all the information here. So if I needed to make a Pactor connection, I could go ahead and do that here at this point. So that's just a very quick walkthrough. If you do have access to a Pactor modem, or if you go ahead and pick one up because you're a gateway ops, and you want to help support the effort, that's a quick walkthrough of just the settings. Now, this is in the client. You would do this obviously on your gateway, but the basic properties are pretty much the same there. So that's a quick walkthrough of those bits and pieces. Let's see. Let me go back over to here. Let's go back to this. Go to there, go to there, nope, this way. There we go. Electric sliding all over the place. And turn that on. There's the URL for the coffee bar questions. I guess I got to point this way in order to get that up. And before we take any other questions, we did have Terry down in let's see. Hold on. I've got a comment in.
Yes, Steve wanted to point out the Pactor 4 stuff is.
Hey, Steve, let me bring you up real quick here to screen. Let me find which mouse I've got to drive to get you to. And where are you? There you are. And ask to unmute. Steve, you wanna touch on anything else about those rules real quick?
Hello. Am I being copied?
Yeah, we are. Yeah. good
Okay.
copy.
This
5x9.
okay. Thank you. This is a waiver, not an S.
Nope, we lost you.
He was 5x9.
You were 5x9. Now you're 0x0.
Low test.
You're
There
back.
you are. You're back.
Okay. I'm sorry. Okay. This is a waiver, not an STA, a special temporary authority. I'm not a lawyer, but that's what it is. It's the 6th or 7th since the docket 7 years ago was to be let to be signed, and it has yet to be signed because there's nobody there that understands specifically what we're talking about. At least in the Wireless Telecommunications Bureau, that is secure enough to take a chance on their career. So what I want to say is the STA or the waiver is the FCC specifically restricts that to those directly involved with the hurricane effort. If you're doing something else like exercising or talking to your buddy or whatever, anything else, that Pactor 4 waiver is not applicable. So if you read that, I put a quote in there that here, I'll put the quote for everybody. I didn't know you were going to call on me to do anything.
That's okay. That's okay.
Let's see.
The quote that you texted says the waiver is limited to amateur radio operators in the United States and its territories using publicly documented data protocols that are compatible with FCC rules, with the exception of the data rate limit waived here for those directly involved with HF hurricane relief communications.
Right. And in my personal opinion, the entire subject is ludicrous, which I've written you about.
Steve, what is the objection, if there is, or the conflict that rises to Pactor 4 not being allowed?
There is none anymore. But at the time when Mr. Bill Cross, who was the last hiree in that position, who retired and got married 7 years ago, when he wrote this, they didn't know any of this, okay? They didn't understand that this is not really applicable to anything we're doing now. If it was, nothing would be allowed. And just like the other rules that they don't reinforce that are not applicable, like you cannot talk on amateur radio on a concurrent basis without first attempting a commercial radio service. That was before routers, cell phones, internet wireless, routers, satellite. That was only a lobby that was put forth by AT&T High Seas many, many years ago. So all of those, the problem with modernizing our rules is that there's no money in it. And they don't, and they did actually gut the Wireless Telecommunications Bureau on the last administration in order to get rid of net neutrality, which the big the big carriers don't want, of course, because it reduces their ability to produce additional income. So it's a complicated mess. But I got to say, this is the sixth or seventh waiver that they've provided. So it's obvious that something needs to be done. And frankly, a lot of our state and federal agencies are moving toward that end, including an additional bureau at the FCC. They're starting to look at this very seriously because of our ability to provide situational awareness in areas that they can't get otherwise, when things aren't, when communications aren't proper and aren't normal and aren't there. So this is becoming more than an ARL effort.
Cool. Excellent. Thank you for that, Steve. Is there anything else that we need to know? So basically, kind of in a nutshell, this waiver essentially allows those of us that are gateway operators to be able to operate with Pactor 4, provided we're providing communication support.
Yeah, any operator that's providing communication for this hurricane, whether it's peer-to-peer or a gateway or end user or whatever, or whether it's not Winlink, it could be another, it could be another whatever, HF link or whatever it is. And it's not limited to Pactor 4. It's limited to anything that has a symbol rate greater than 300 baud.
Yeah. So that's another great question that's come in, and that is, what other sorts of protocols could we use? I know for those of us here on the WaveTalkers crew, we've been mostly talking about Vara FM and Vara HF, which competes very nicely with Pactor 3 speeds, but it doesn't really get up to Pactor 4 speeds. Is there anything else that's doing those higher data rates?
Yes, the ITU or our governments that our government has adopted also, STANAG, STANAG, STANAG protocols, which the federal government and the military use, are all have a symbol rate greater than 300 baud. Even the FEC protocol, their FEC protocol has a symbol rate. So everything, frankly, everything anywhere that's ARQ protocol exceeds the 300 baud symbol rate rule.
Cool. All right. So thank you very much for adding a little bit of extra clarity to that. We've
got a bunch of rules that don't mean anything. Can I text you in the Bahamas? Easily. Well, there's no third-party traffic allowed into the Bahamas on amateur radio, because back in the day, it was competing with AT&T High Seas, WLO, and Globe Wireless, and all of the ship-to-shore commercial services, common carrier services. But that's null and void now. But
right.
they haven't bothered to void the rules.
Right.
Steve, is there any potential liability for gateway operators running Pactor 4 in this emergency authorization?
No.
If somebody
No.
does something off?
No.
Okay.
Can you tell the difference by listening?
No.
Okay, there you go.
Cool. All right. Thank you very much, Steve, for adding a little bit of clarity to that for us.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, let's dive into a couple of questions. The first one that and I see Michael came in with a question: what's the difference between Pactor 4 and the new Vara speed-wise? My understanding is that Pactor 4 is nearly twice the speed of what the Vara speeds are currently. We'd have to look up the exact figures to.
That's not the case. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to find a study that we did on all those protocols, and I'm going to put it on the chat.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Let me go find it.
Okay, so let's dive into a couple of the questions. The first one that came in. And this came in a couple days ago, right after we posted. Randall, Kilo 7 Hotel Uniform Hotel, asked, can we review position reports and how to use them in emergencies? And for this, what I'd like to do is go over to my colleague, David Goldenberg, who can walk through First of all, where the position reports are. Let me add a spotlight for you. Where the position reports are, what do you need to be able to set those up, and what's some interesting ways we might be able to use those in an emergency?
Okay, well, very good. Well, let's dive right into it. And if I'm going down the wrong path, just correct me here. So here you'll see my client station. This is the one in my office here at home that runs my primary Winlink client, not gateway or not any of my gateways, but anyways, this is the one here. You can see here there's this cross hash here, target thing, and it's green because I have a modem GPS connected to it, and it's receiving data. And for the position report, if you select that and click on it, it'll open up some information here. It will tell you about the modem that it's receiving. And I guess you could have more than one GPS connected to this. It's going to show you all the information that's here. And you can use this to post a report. Now, Dan pointed out, I don't remember where you heard this, Dan, but Dan pointed out that there's a comment field here. And one of the things we can do as operators when we do our position reports is we can go in here and say, hey, if I'm running a Digipeater, if I have the Digipeater turned on my station, I can add that here, and this will go along with the mapping and the data that gets sent out with your position report. Anyhow, as long as you're communicating here and you've got a status and you've got a latitude and longitude that you think are in the general proper vicinity, you can go down here to the bottom and select post a report. We'll do that. And you'll see in my outbox, I have this position report. And so I'm going to just go ahead and do this over Telnet. I'm going to send and receive. So that report goes out, and you can see I no longer have a report in my outbox. And I'll count to 10 and hope that the magic happens. And I'll check in again to see if they've confirmed it. Not quite yet. All right, well, lucky for me, we did this a little bit before the show. And what you can do is not go back into the position report, but you can go into the forms and maps and select the position reports. That's what we just sent. And there's a couple of different ones. You can do a 30-day position report, or you can do a nearest position report. We'll just go ahead and select this nearest one. And we're going to display the map. And what you're seeing here, does that look okay, Chris?
I am.
We're good?
Yes.
Okay. And what you see here is in green, that's me. That's where I sent the last position report that I sent. And you can see around me other users over a period of time. W6GRG, Oxnard, CAN6, JGB, and a bunch of other hams in the vicinity here that have, sorry, I got to move the control bar because I can't see. There you go. I'll zoom in. Other operators that have checked in and provided a position report. And there's information here that goes along with that, including had I had that position report I sent. And actually, let me hop out of here really quick. See if I can send one more time. Close this. Start my position report. Oh, look. Oh, it's a duplicate report. So it did receive it. And we'll go look at the map one more time. And I suppose as I'm looking for other stations near me, it's not going to show me a lot of data about mine, because really mostly I'm looking for the rest of the information that would come through. And again, if you were listing your Digipeater, you'd have a comment here that would list that information. Is that what you wanted to see today? Is there other information you want to show, Chris?
No, I think that's good. That's really helpful. Randall, if you're on, does that help you with the question that you had for us?
And there's the 30-day position report. This is a different report that we could show as well. I selected that one, and you'll see there's a lot more operators over the 30-day period as opposed to whatever the filter was that I had set previous. So you get a couple more check-ins or a couple of other folks that have provided reports.
David, do you have to have a GPS connected in order to submit a position report?
No, you can, if you know where you are, when you go into this position report, occasionally my GPS will get disconnected, but the system remembers, what you presented the last time. And you can key this data in manually if you wanted to, or use your grid square and report in. Now, is it as accurate as having the GPS information in there? No, but it will give you a pretty close to where you are if you're putting in your latitude and longitude as opposed to just putting in your grid square. Obviously, your grid square covers a larger piece of ground.
Excellent. Yeah, I really like the idea of being able to use that comment field and add a little comment, say, hey, I'm operating, I've got my Digipeater turned on. And since you have your screen shared there, I mean, this would be really helpful for folks who are using, like, say, Vara FM. You're in a disaster area. Can you bring up your Vara FM screen and show us where we set that Digipeater setting real quick?
Absolutely. I'm going to.
Because when you're setting up to Digipete, this is one of the challenges that we had with the exercise just a few weeks ago that we reported on in a previous episode, is several of us were running Digipeters and we were doing a lot of peer-to-peer traffic. So being able to identify and figure out, who's where, and what the Digipeters were, we were having to use voice traffic in order to be able to do that. But a couple of other options for being able to essentially let your other fellow operators know that you're running a Digipeater would be to do this. So
you'd open up your Vara and you'd go into settings and the Vara setup, and in the Vara setup up here, you have the option to name your Digipeater appropriately, and that's where you're going to enter it in. That's the information that I shared in my position report that other users that are close to me could use in the situation where they don't want to go to a gateway, but they want to use a digipeating station to either connect point-to-point, peer-to-peer, or to transit messages through to a further away station. So you'd mark it right here.
Excellent. Cool. Excellent. Thank you very much, Dave. That was pretty helpful. Let's move on to the next question. The next one has come in from Bill, Kilo Hotel 6 uniform. And Bill says, solar panels. Chris, you mentioned that you should connect the solar panels last when hooking up the controller and solar charge controller, battery, etc., as it could damage the panels. Just curious why, since it seems there is an open circuit from the panels, or is this a safety issue? Maybe both. Well, a couple of reasons. So let me go back to that part of the presentation that we talked about. So this is connecting solar charge controllers to your radio system, and it's the order of operations that you do. In general, the first thing that you want to do for most solar charge controllers is you want to connect the battery to the solar charge controller, because what that does is it boots up the solar charge controller, and so it knows immediately what sorts of power in order to submit to your battery when the power does start coming in from your solar panels. So it gives you the opportunity to go into your solar charge controller, make any setting changes that you need. So maybe you were just recently charging a lead acid battery and you need to change over to the charging profile for a lithium iron phosphate battery, or you were using another different battery technology. This gives you that opportunity to go ahead and do all of those setting changes. While you're doing this, until you're ready to plug your solar panels into the solar charge controller, it's a really good idea to have your solar panels covered. So if you think back to the episode that we talked about on solar panels, I had my solar panels that were not connected. I had them in some kind of a cover. So for instance, for the power film solar panels, I keep those folded up so that the panels are not generating electricity. And then you've got live wires that are there kind of cranking out power. For the monocrystalline panels that I had those folded up so they were shaded out of the sun. It's a really good idea to keep them not active until you're ready to use that power. So once you get that solar charge controller booted up, and it does that usually from the battery itself, then the next step is usually to go ahead and plug in the solar panels into the solar charge controller. The solar charge controller then already knows the technology or the charge rate to send that power then down into your battery. It can do all of the calculations and adjustments that it needs to. Then once you've got your solar charging all up and running, then go ahead and connect your load. And you can either do that by connecting your radio or other gear directly to your solar charge controller, if it's that, if that's the type of controller that you have, or if you're just going to plug directly off of the battery. So that's kind of the idea behind the order that I have here. I have looked at a few other solar charge controllers, and some of them do say, hey, you want to plug the solar panels in first. Obviously, you want to follow the manufacturer's instructions for each different unit. This is just a general guideline to be able to follow if you're going to just start off and you're trying to plug in and figure out things on your own. This is generally the safest way to go about setting this up. So hopefully that helps Bill clear that up. And I do see that before we go on to the next question, that Bob Kilo 6 Bravo X-ray Juliet has asked, please define Digipeaters. That's a great question to be able to add in. So with Winlink, let me actually jump over to my Winlink system here. Let me go over to the walk-up and turn this down to there. Go down into the corner. Let me close my Pactor settings here. It takes just a second to close up, and I'm going to, let's say you're going to compose a message. Let's say I wanted to send this message to David, W0DHG, and I'm going to give it a subject of hello. I'm not actually going to send this, but we're going to send that, say hello, and then test message, maybe send pizza. There we go, send pizza. All right, so normally when you send a Winlink message, if you're going to send it through the RMS gateways, through the radio message server system, you would just go ahead and post this up to your outbox. However, if you're going to send this as a peer-to-peer message where you're not going to use the gateway system at all, let's say you're in an area, you're not able to reach the gateways are down, something like that, you can send this message peer-to-peer. And you do that by here, right in the message itself, you change the send as from a Winlink message. This is one of those hidden features that's here in Winlink. You change it from a Winlink message to a peer-to-peer message. So you can change that here, peer-to-peer. And then when you post it to the outbox, if I was to connect just to the RMS system, this message would just sit there. It wouldn't actually send, because this one's looking for specifically a peer-to-peer connection. So let me go up, and we're going to go to, now I don't have everything set up for this, but we'll try it. So Vara FM, and I'll say open session. It might complain that it can't talk to my radio and some other things. And yeah, that's probably what it's going to do. But once it comes up, you can change your connection type here. Make sure you can set it either to direct, which is going to send directly to, say, David, if I was able to reach him. But let's say I'm in a situation where I can't do a direct connection to him. What I can do is I can use what are called Digipeaters. And we did a couple of episodes about this. You can change this over to a Digipeater connection, and then it's going to set the station that you want to go to. So in this case, I'm going to send it to W0DHG. and I need to go through, I know, a Digipeater. And so not all stations have this turned on or set up. But here in Southern California, I know that one of the stations that has set up as a Digipeater, it's not their gateway, it's another protocol that allows me to bounce my message through their radio, and it essentially makes a direct hop over to the other station. I know Rob, who is W6RH, I know his Digipeater is -4. Now, I only know that because I've done a lot of practicing and operating here. And if I didn't know that, then using that position report and having the other operators in the area post in their position report comment, hey, I'm running a Digipeater, and this is what my station's Digipeater is, then you're able to map that. You can say, okay, I can get from my station over to this station and make a hop via RF into the place that I want to go. So you could then, so what this is doing is this is saying connect via Digipeater. So I'm trying to connect to W0DHG via this other Digipeater. And it doesn't have to be a gateway. Literally any client station, any station who's running Vara FM can go ahead and turn on their Digipeater, just like David showed you just a little while ago, by simply putting in your Vara settings what your Digipeater's designation is. Here in Southern California, we've, for the most part, especially in Ventura County, we've adopted the standard of using -4 for our Digipeaters. And so we're able to hop between different stations, especially, it's especially helpful where we have to deal with the mountains around here where we don't have direct line of sight. So you're able to send that message and bounce it through those different stations in order to get that traffic there. And it's not touching the RMS gateway. So in the event where the internet's down, you can still pass traffic. And a couple of weeks ago, if you go back and you watch episode 40, I believe it was, we showed the LA ACS group, and they were using this exact methodology to transfer their check-in and their Winlink traffic. They set up one station up on a high location. They turned it on as a Digipeater, and then they were able to essentially create their own little mini repeater, if you will, for Winlink traffic that covered much of the Los Angeles area. So
you don't have your radio on, do you?
I don't even have a radio connected to this.
Okay. I'm trying to connect to that, and it won't.
No, it won't work because I didn't set up for doing that. I set up to be able to. I've been testing Pactor stuff to make sure that it would work. All right, so there we go. So that's how that works. Let's take the next question. The next one came in from Midge, and who is Whiskey 6 Lima India Kilo, and she asked, she's got two questions here. The first one is, what is better, to leave your radio on all the time or turn it off after your transmissions? I guess that really depends on what you're doing. So if on an exercise, I turn my radio on and I leave it on all the time once we are in the exercise and we're kind of going along. But if we slide over like that and bring that back up, there we go. But if you're just set up at home, or you're in an emergency situation where you're trying to conserve power, then perhaps following a schedule of at the top of the hour, turn your radio on, leave it on for some amount of time to be able to check in and check traffic. David, Dan, any other thoughts from you guys on that, on the leave your radio on or leave it off question?
I'll let you go first, Dan.
I was just going to say a lot depends on battery life and ability to restart it. If you're on a handheld, you may want to turn it off, or you may want to have predetermined times that your group all knows to check in.
Yeah, and I think my thoughts are, there's a couple of questions here. The first one, should you always try low power on your HT? And my response to that is no. on HT, I always start with high power because there's not a lot of power in there just to start off with. I might roll back to low power after I make the connection if I know it's very strong, and a repeater or a simplex station comes back to me like immediately with full quieting. Then I might back off to low power if I think I need to be miserly with my battery. As far as leaving a radio on all the time, wow, that's one of those like how long is a piece of string questions. The radio here in my office where I work, most of the time I leave on when I'm here working, but I don't leave it on when I go to bed because it's not doing anything other than just sucking power out of the wall. My gateways in the garage and the other locations that I have them squirreled away secretly, those obviously run all of the time. But there are very few radios like in my house that I leave on all the time, just because if I'm not using them, I don't want that phantom power suck going all the time. Of something that's not used. Plus, there's also, I live with other people and they don't want to hear, repeater IDs every 10 minutes, just throughout the day. I don't want to hear them either. Mostly I turn them down. And when I see the the SWR meter going, I might turn it up to see what the traffic is. And, the same thing goes when I get in my vehicle to drive. I don't turn on the radio every time I go somewhere. Some of the time I do, but again, it just kind of depends on, where I'm going, what I'm doing. And is it important that I'm paying attention to what's going on in the radio? So maybe.
Yeah, I agree with that. I leave my my gateway obviously on all the time, and that's got it's got commercial power coming in, and then I've got a backup battery on it, so I know if power goes off. I generally keep a smaller battery on the gateway, and then I can switch over to a larger battery if power goes down for a longer period of time. But I generally do not leave my radios on all the time, especially the one that I'm talking on, mostly for noise and for power drain. I've mentioned a few times, I primarily operate on emergency power. I operate on battery power pretty much exclusively for all of my radios. Unless I'm actively like testing or working on something. Like I've been testing the 7300 and the Pactor modem this week since it came in. So I'm running off of commercial power for that. But anytime I'm not operating, I usually, for those, I'll turn off the power supply, and I'll also unplug the antenna. Here in Southern California, lightning is not so much a concern for us most of the time, although we do periodically get it. However, when I lived back on the East Coast, you could pretty much set your watch to an afternoon thunder boomer that would roll through pretty much every day right around 5 o'clock on the Chesapeake. And so in your local area, you may know what the weather patterns are there, where you're likely to get some of that interference. So it's definitely a good idea to unplug your antenna when you're not using it, and unplug your radio when you're not, or turn off your power just to conserve it when you're not using it. So hopefully that helps. The question, her second question, and David kind of addressed this a little bit, is should you always try low power when you're operating your HT? And again, this really depends. I like to start off on low power to test, can I make a connection? And that's mostly kind of to check. And that's that experience that you bring to the table as you're testing things. But once you're in let's say you get deployed for an emergency activity, you want to make sure that you can get that message through. And your HT, as David mentioned, is not really pushing a whole lot of power there. So 5 watts is probably worth keeping that up.
I think it also depends too on circumstances. If you're in a real emergency situation, you don't want to keep trying at different power levels, to get the message through. It's more important that you get it through and get off the air and make room for the next person that has to get a message through. Also, with time, you'll start to get a pretty good feeling about what you're going to need to get through. That's just an experience kind of thing. But there always are new connections that you just don't know.
Roland, Delta Golf 1 Golf Hotel Radio. He's coming into us from Germany. He mentions that he works on projectors, lightning protection, and EMP arresters after the antenna, and they release the cloak cable using switches. So he has sent some pictures previously on some of the previous shows. He's got a pretty fancy little box set up. I believe it's outside. And if I'm understanding that correctly, he's got relay switches that he can switch to disconnect all of that. We are going to have to do a show at some point about roll-in setup because it's pretty awesome. I see Steve has a question. Have I ever seen lightning in Southern California? Yes, I have. 3 or 4 times here in Southern California since 2006. When I lived on the East Coast, it was pretty much, especially in the summertime, it's pretty much a nightly experience, pretty much right around 5 o'clock when that lightning does roll in. So, all right, I hope that helps. Let's see. King, Kilo Charlie 7, Lima Oscar X-Ray says, I've started using my ICOM 7100. Do I need a signal link to do Winlink, or does it already have digital connections for it? And I believe, I don't have an ICOM 7100, but I believe it does have the USB port on it. So you can use that very similar to the way both the 9700 and the 7300 work. So I don't think you have to have a signal link to be able to switch. However, I don't know how well that particular radio works for the quick switching of mode. So if you're trying to pass both voice and data traffic, it might be helpful to be able to quickly switch between those, having a signal link, but I don't think it's absolutely necessary. And that's kind of in contrast to the Yaesu peer of that rig, which is kind of the it's the Yaesu FT991A. That rig, even though you can do all the digital modes with it through its USB port, David KK60A has one. He's the only one of us in the group that has one of those. And he was definitely finding that for quick switching between voice traffic and data traffic, having a signal link for something like the 991A definitely was pretty helpful.
Yeah, that's a Yaesu, I don't want to say deficiency, but it's a difference in the Yaesu versus the ICOM. Most of the folks that I know that have ICOM radios, you can do without a signal link. The ones that have the USB and the 7100 does, you don't need any additional interface. It's pretty seamless and easy to do. Whereas the Yaesus like the 891, 991, and even some of the HF radios, you have to go in and set a whole bunch of different parameters for the digital on the based on the sound card versus having the external signal link. So for the ICOM radios, you should be able to get by. And, again, what do we talk about? We say go to winlink.org and look at the recipe, the how-tos and the recipe. There's a PDF out there that walks you right through what you need to do for those radios. It makes it very simple. So,
yeah, well, there's a guy who's got a YouTube channel. It's I think it's called Ham Radio A to Z. It used to be called. He used to call his channel. I don't recall the Smoked Ham or something like that. And he's got a bunch of walkthroughs for the ICOM 7100. His content is really good. He takes a lot of time to go through step by step each different feature. So if you've got the ICOM 7100 King, you may want to check out his channel. I think it's Ham Radio A to Z. He's got a lot of really good step-by-step channels. I'm not sure if he's got one specifically on Winlink. The Winlink setup for it, to my understanding, is very similar to the ICOM 7300, and there's definitely lots of videos that show how to do that. I could probably set up a time to be able to connect with you also to kind of look through some of those settings as well. Steve does have a note in here in the chat saying the sound card chip in the 7100 requires no special drivers. Windows identifies it as USB audio codec, and it uses the generic driver, just like if you plugged in any USB sound card dongle in it. Just go ahead and check for the check the manual to be able to do
and a little below in the chat, Michael Cam6 or Cam5 BR posted a link to that the ham that you were talking about, the A to Z guy, on a walkthrough on exactly how to deal with the 7100.
Perfect.
And it's A2Z.
Yeah.
Yeah, A2Z. Yeah.
Yeah, but he also used to go
out to
by
him.
the ham cured smoke or something.
Ham
like
cured
that.
smoke. That's what it was. That
Yeah.
was his channel. That's what he called his channel before he switched it to A to Z. He's a great guy. I've reached out to him and have communicated a couple of times with him. He's got a lot of really good movies on the 7100, the 7300, and the ICOM 705. Basically like takes the manual and walks through in short little bursts how to go through that content. So really good stuff from him. And great, thank you for that. Let's see where we are with other questions that have come in. If you have any other questions that you would like us to cover, go ahead and add them in here. And I see we are getting up close to the top of the hour before we switch over to our after party.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, apparently it really does. We had a question come in from Franz, and I texted this one over to Greg, or maybe someone else in here knows. The Dragon DR 7800 is running on a gateway that he's got. And he says, in regular time intervals, the Dragon modem sends the CW identifier in connect mode. This often makes where'd it go? This often makes
An existing connection S7-8
very
slow, and the speed does not recover. How can I reliably
switch off
the CW identifier?
Yeah, I know in the US the CW identifier is required for us, so that's a check that you've got to have if you're here in the US, but I'm not sure where you would make that setting change. If anyone else who knows a little bit about the Pactors could help with that, go ahead and ping me with that. Before we wrap up with anything else, Terry, Z01HOG, did an exercise this past week, and he wanted to share some information with us about that. Terry, you want to share your screen and chat with us a little bit about what you guys did there in New Zealand?
Yeah, okay. I'll just run the video. Start off with. We'll just pull this up and go with this here. You got that? So here we are. We're set up.
You got to share your screen.
6:30 a.m. in the morning. It's got a.
We hear it, but we don't see it.
You got to do a screen share.
You got to do the screen share again.
And running a dual band aerial off the top.
There we go.
Also running. I'll just shoot back. There we go. So here we are. We're set up just after 6:30 a.m. in the morning. I've got a aerial up, 5 meg dipole, and running a dual band aerial off the top. Also running 2 extra dual band rigs in the car, so that's 3 in total, and a commercial VHF radio. So yeah, we'll just have a look in the car now and give you a look.
No teams there at all yet.
So here we are, World Rally Championships, New Zealand. Been 10 years since we've had these cars down here, so it's a welcome return for many spectators, and a lot of the drivers enjoy coming down to New Zealand. So yeah, our job today is to sit here and do 5k safety point. So as the vehicles come through, we record the numbers at each checkpoint.
2 Alpha from Rally Base, any cars?
So here we go on another polling session, so stand by and listen.
I gave you car 2, I think, and car 37. Thank you. 2 Bravo, any cars? Car 2. Thank you.
Got my
2 Charlie, any cars from Rally Base? Yeah, car 1. Car 1, thank you. 2 Delta, any cars? 2 Delta, car 44. 44, thank you. And 2 Echo, any cars?
Yeah, car 42.
Thank you. 16.
So that
I'll
was,
have
can you hear us there?
Yeah, we can.
Yep. So that was out in the field. What you can see now is basic comm set up for that one day. Rally base is down in the Auckland waterfront, and right in the middle of the central business district, with a lot of noise and interference on all bands basically. So everything had to be linked out of rally base. So you can see here we've got rally base. We had a UHF to UHF link going out to a remote HF station, running 5 megs. One of the stages we had very iffy VHF comms, so that was just basically a backup for that. Then we ran 2 UHF to VHF links out to 2 meters repeaters. One was a permanent repeater, and the other one was a short-term special purpose repeater, which we have a number of, plus UHF link out to the commercial repeaters. So that was just a quick rundown on what we did over the weekend. We had 10 WRC1 cars, which are hybrids, from Toyota, Hyundai and Ford come down, running the World Rally Championship, a number of WRC2 cars. That last slide there was of a young boy, turned 22 on Friday, and he's the youngest world champion. He actually tied up the world championship with 2 rounds to go. So yeah, that was just a brief rundown what we did. There was actually 4 days of the rally. We were involved for 2 days. We had on the Friday 14 field stations, each double crewed, and on the Saturday there was 8 field stations. So yeah, it was a good exercise and good to get back out there with rally cars again.
That's so cool. You know, it's great to see you work for T-shirts just like we do here in the States. And it was funny, I was thinking to myself as we were going through the whole race thing, you know, the races I'm used to working are more pedestrian foot races. And I thought to myself, oh, it must be so cool to have a car come through, because the bib numbers are going to be really clear. But then when I saw their cars go through, they don't have big bib numbers on them.
In the early days, they used to have the numbers on the doors, and going through the stages, as you could probably see, the cars get quite dirty, and you couldn't see them. So they've now repositioned the numbers up on the rear quarter light, and they're orange, and they do stick out, but sometimes they do get rather dirty and can be missed. It's it's a bit hard to read. They've also got them on the some of them on the top of the windscreen, so when cars are coming towards you, can pick them up. So what we do is we actually record the number from each point in the stage on our own sheet, so we can actually track the cars through, see if any have fallen off the road. They also have transponders, and the top 15 cars had video cameras even in them. And the World Rally Organisation had a plane circling around for the entire event with all the transponder gear for all the various cameras, and all the timing was done basically by microwave link up to the plane, then back down to base, which enabled them to do split times during the stages as well. So it was quite a big rigmarole.
Very cool.
That's really awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. Anybody in the chat or in the Zoom have any questions for Terry about the setup that you guys used? You guys were mostly using voice traffic that you were passing. You mentioned the microwave connection up to the plane. How was that data being transferred?
Yeah, that's all for the organisation side of things, to handle the data actually coming up from the cars. When they do they're actually doing live television broadcasts from start to finish of the stage, so they can actually go into the car, have a look at the drivers and the co-driver in the car, or out through the front of the car. Some of them actually got video cameras down to their feet, so you can see their feet work with the left foot braking and stuff going through the corners, and their speed, the braking, amount of braking, amount of acceleration, accelerator use is also all sent up to the airplane, then back down to base to a big setup down there where that's all combined. They had 80, I think it was 80 people on the ground just doing the television broadcasts here in New Zealand, and another 30 in Helsinki finishing it off. Then it was going live to air. Wow. Around the world. So, what our part of it was, just very minor compared to the overall communications plan. But it's good to be involved in these events. It gives us a chance to get out there and practice our portable deployments. And most of our stuff all of our stuff was done by voice. Really, there was no need to for any type of digital communications for what we're actually doing, because everyone in the stage needed to hear the numbers coming through from the other points.
A question came in the chat saying, based on the angle of the drifting cars, were you on the wrong side of the track for where they were coming to be in a little more danger? Luckily, we had there was a cattle grate there. I don't know if you guys know what a cattle grate is. They just put it across the road. There's a cattle grate there, great big posts on it. So we're actually sitting behind that. So we weren't actually in the firing line of the cars, but we're definitely in the firing line of the stones and all the crap coming off the road. I don't know if you noticed in that photo of the ambulance, they had sheets and stuff all over the windscreens and stuff. That ambulance only had 500 Ks on it. They're all brand new. They hadn't been fully kitted out, and found out on the Saturday that one got a broken windscreen from flying stones, and the ambulance guys weren't very happy to have to replace that. Were there any equipment failures or any issues that you guys had to deal with, come up with something else, or was your plan that you came up with, did it work pretty well for you?
The plan worked pretty well. On the Saturday, we do have problems with one of our short-term special purpose repeaters with noise getting into it at the location. So we actually put two up there at that location to overcome that. And we did get a fair bit of noise in one, so we just switched over to the other one and used that as primary.
Love it. Having a primary and a backup is always key to success. So when I programmed the radios all just for the event, and I programmed the primary and reverse for both the primary and secondary. So we had
the ability just to flick across to the next memory channel for the reverse of the repeater as well.
Absolutely brilliant. Very cool. Hey, thanks a lot for sharing that, Terry. Very cool.
Yeah, no problems, no problems. Thanks for letting me share it.
Absolutely. Very cool. I see a couple of other questions also came in. We'll do those real quick before we wrap up. A question came in from YouTube. Eric asked, does the Pactor modem slow down to connect to a Vara FM station? And the way I understand this, and so I know there's some other folks on here that have a little more experience with Pector, is that the Pector modem uses a proprietary protocol. Now it will slow down to the other Pector speeds, so Pector 3, Pector 2, Pector 1, as conditions deteriorate or as it needs to slow down or to connect with older Pector equipment. But you still would need the sound card interface in order to do Vara. So you can't use the Pector modem to talk using the Vara protocols. So I've recently joined on to the Pector P4 Dragon groups.io site, and I did see a conversation on there briefly about somebody who's built a box that will connect both the Pector and the Signal Link into it, so you could have them both running simultaneously and easily swap traffic back and forth between the two. So I hope that helps with that question. And then Bill AC7SR had made a question. In order for people to digipete, you all have to be on the same frequency. That is absolutely true. You need to be on the same frequency in order to do that. Just digipeating is basically kind of like simplex, but you can extend the simplex by sending your signal to another station, and then that station continues to reflect its signal off. And you can link multiple digipeaters together. We've done that in some of our previous episodes. We've sent messages from here in Ventura County into, say, Dan in the Valley via a couple of hops and so forth. But he says, do you see a lot of congestion on that individual frequency? And you certainly can if you've got multiple stations all in there, and that's where you would do. If you go back to episode 1, I believe, the very first episode that we did a mock digital voice net, and your net control operator, you can do all of this on a single frequency. Your net control operator would ask for any station that had digital traffic to send. The stations would call in, they would queue them up. Net control then would call out and say, NR6V, please send your traffic. NR6V would acknowledge, send their traffic. W0DHG, do you have traffic to send? Go ahead and send your traffic, and they would do that. So that would be one way to coordinate that. I know another one of the groups here in Los Angeles uses a separate digital frequency sometimes for sending their digital traffic versus their voice traffic. And if need be, you could split that out to a couple of frequencies to do that. You can also do this via HF as well. So you can send.
Yeah, we were concerned when we first started setting up these gateways on the same channel. We were concerned that there might be too much traffic. What we found for routine traffic is that's not the case. It works just fine. But in a disaster or something that would cause traffic to go up extensively, we would probably have to move some of the gateways to different frequencies. Also, I think some of the guys, I'm not sure if David's done it or not, some of the guys have moved their packet gateways to a different frequency. I have both on the same frequency because I'm using one radio, but I think some of the other guys have moved packet to the 050 frequency and Vara on the 030.
That's the standard we use here in Ventura County. All of the Vara traffic is on is on one frequency, 145.030, and all of the packet traffic is on 145.050. And so we create that that coordination separation here just by convention within our county in order to alleviate that type of traffic separation. But you could certainly, that's something you would want to coordinate with your local team in your local area and with your frequency coordination. Anything else? I know we're over our hour. Let me bring up one more time this if you do want to make a donation and support us, go ahead and send that to the Red Cross to help with the Hurricane Ian relief efforts that are going on, or to your charity of choice. To be able to do that, we really appreciate the support. If you do want to support us and help us out, go into our YouTube channel, give us a like on that content that's there, and subscribe to us. It really does help get our content being shown around to other folks. So before we jump into the after party and we wrap up the live streams, Dan, any closing thoughts for us for this week?
Not really. I think, being question and answer, I think we covered them. I did see I went onto that Groups IO for the Dragon modem, and I saw one other user that had posted a similar question for a different reason. But he said he'd set the setting to 0, which should shut it off, but he said it didn't work. So didn't see any solutions, but apparently not the only one that's having that issue or similar.
Yeah, I'm still very new at it. I've literally just had this thing for a couple of days, so I haven't even turned it on to my gateway yet. I'm still kind of testing. I want to make sure that it's functioning the way that I would expect it to before I connect it onto my gateway and start trying to serve and support traffic, which is always a good idea. You want to test your gear, make sure it works before you try and support others with it. David, W0DHG, what kind of closing thoughts do you have for us?
I just think, get your gear out, test it out, play with it, make sure it works, because you never know when that hurricane could be, bearing down on you. So, another good episode.
Great. Well, thanks everyone for joining us on the live streams. If you're joining us on YouTube or Facebook or LinkedIn, please do like and subscribe to our content there. We also post it up on our WaveTalkers website. We'll post some of the other links and so forth. If you're curious to read through that FCC notification that went out, I know it's posted currently on the front page of QRZ, so you can go onto qrz.com and check that out there. I'll probably post a link to it up on the WaveTalkers website as well, so it's available for everyone there. So with that, please stay safe, everyone. And if you are involved with the Ian hurricane relief efforts, thank you very much for your service and supporting everyone who's caught up in this, and we'll see you all next week. So thanks a lot. Hang around if you're in the Zoom, and we will we'll open it up for the after party here in just a second. So see you next week. 7-3.
7-3. Wait, we're on the cover of QRZ?
We're not. The link
got it.
thing is up there.
On the cover of the Rolling Stone.
Hey, thanks a lot, everyone.